Hi guys, Dr. Falconberry here. I wanted to do a somewhat quick and dirty introduction to how to use SPSS, particularly with the goal of analyzing our class experiment data for our Site 501 Research Methods class. So the things that I talk about in here will be particular to the kinds of things that we've done in this class, but we might be able to use it for other contexts as well. So what I wanted to basically go through were three functions that you need to be comfortable with in order to complete your class experiment report, particularly the results section. The first one is the most important one. How do you import the data file that I sent you guys and put on Blackboard? How do you import that into SPSS? The second will be, once you have that data, how do we turn that data into a nice visual display? Particularly, we're going to talk about how to use a bar graph. And then the third will be, how do we do our statistical analysis? We're going to be doing what's known as a mixed ANOVA. That is, we have an analysis of variance with one between subjects factor and one within subjects factor. And it's not particularly hard, but it does require a few steps. And so I'm going to be very, I'm going to go through this kind of slow, but I think that will help. So let's go to the first step that we would want to do here, which is import our data. So what we need to do to import our data is I'm going to assume that you've already downloaded the Excel, the .xls file onto your computer somewhere. Desktop's a good place, etc. Once you've done that, we're going to go to File, and then we'll go to Open, and of course what we want to open is some data. So click on that. Now, this will look different for your computer. For my computer, I've got to go through a lot of file structure here to find the data, so you can kind of ignore this for a second. It's in the Spring 501 folder. Okay, now here it is. I'm going to point to it. What I want is this thing called example-data.xls. Now, this is a data file that's very similar to your data file, but not exactly the same. This, in fact, is some data from an experiment that I had a class do about 3 years ago. And the results are kind of similar to what I have seen with you guys, but nonetheless, they're not exactly the same. So you'll still have to do your own analysis. You'll notice the issue here is I can't click on example data. It's not highlighted. Well, the reason for that is because what I'm looking for down here is format. I'm only filtering those .sav files, those SPSS files. I want to expand that and let it read Excel files. If I do that, I can now click on example-data.xls and click Open. Okay, so it's going to come up with a little thing. Let me move this over into the window so you can see it. It's going to ask you a question or two. The main question is, do you want to read variable names from the first row of data? Now, the way I've done our data, the answer is yes. Okay, so it's going to do a couple things. I'll put this back into our view. And there is our nice, pretty data file. Let me make this a little bit, make this fit a little bit better. Okay, there it is. Let me expand this window just by dragging it over again. You'll see that our data file only has 4 columns, one for subject, one for condition. So this condition is our between subjects variable of level of processing. The concrete column is the number of concrete words that they recalled from the list of 10, and the abstract column is the number of abstract words they recalled from the list. So in general, the way you want to do something like this is you want your between subjects variable, like condition, to be in one column here, and then you want the measures for each within subjects variable to have their own column. So that's why we have a concrete column and an abstract column. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go from data view, where I can actively see all of my data. You can see I have a lot of people here. 168 participants is what we had. I'm going to switch to variable view. So I'm going to click on variable view down at the bottom. And what I want to do is I want to particularly give some more descriptive information to this condition variable. So you'll notice that condition, if we go back to data view, is either A or B. Now, of course, that's unless you know exactly what A and B represent, that's not very informative to someone else. So what I'm going to do is in variable view, I'm going to go to values right here. And if I click on that column or on that little cell that says values, then that lets me put in some value labels. particularly I can do the following. I know that A means shallow processing. So I'm going to go ahead and put that pair in and click Add. And then B is deep processing. So I can click Add there. And now when I click OK, that will give SPSS some more information about what those A's and B's represent. Now you won't see it here, but you'll see it in the analysis in just 1 second. So at this point, we effectively have everything we need in terms of the data loaded. Now we are ready to do some analysis. The first thing I recommend that you do is not jump into the analysis, but rather you want to look at your data. You want to get a nice visual display. We're going to do that through constructing a bar graph. And I'm going to go into some great detail so that you can construct a bar graph that not only lets you see what your data looks like, but is also what I call publication ready. In other words, it doesn't have the standard sort of colors. It's a nice thing that would work in a black and white journal article. In other words, it's something you can copy and paste directly into your Word document when you're working on your results section. So let's see how to do that. What we want to do is we want to click on Graphs up here at the top of the screen. Now, depending on the version of SPSS you're using, these menus will look a little bit different, but I find that most of them tend to have something called Legacy Dialogues. So if you click on Legacy Dialogues, you can go over here to just Bar as an option. So we're going to click on Bar. Okay, now right here in the middle, it gives us sort of the basic options for our bar chart. What we are going to want to do is to make what's called a clustered bar chart. And importantly, we want to tell SPSS that the data in our chart are summaries for separate variables. So we click on clustered and then summaries of separate variables. And now we're going to define the elements of our bar chart. Okay? Now the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to tell SPSS what our bars represent. The way we want our graph to look is we want our graph to look like the mean number of abstract words recalled and the mean number of concrete words recalled. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on concrete and move it over. And we're going to do the same thing with abstract and then move it over. And so now this tells you that a bar will show you the mean of concrete words and the mean of abstract words. The last thing to do here is to define the category axis. In other words, on the x-axis, what are the different categories of these clustered bars? And that's going to be level of processing, right? That's going to be shallow and then deep. So that is given to us by this condition variable. So we click on condition and then move it over. Okay. So we could click OK, but I'm going to add one thing to it. This one thing we're going to find in the options menu, and that is error bars. It's good practice. In fact, APA journals require this, as do psychological science journals, require that your graphs have some measure of error on them. So what we're going to do is we're going to display error bars, and we want the error bars to represent 95% confidence intervals. Click on those and you'll be in good shape. So we click continue and then OK. And that's going to show up on the output window, so I'm going to move that into your view. And you can see you've got a nice little graph here. Okay. In fact, take a look at the graph for just a second. You'll notice that shallow processing overall results in fewer words recalled than does deep processing. And particularly, it's kind of interesting that in deep processing, concrete is almost higher than abstract, but there is absolutely no difference in terms of shallow processing. So this can give you some ideas into, well, maybe there's a main effect of condition, right? Shallow processing is significantly less than deep processing. And there might be a main effect of word type, and there might even be an interaction, but we'll let the statistics tell us that for sure. Now, you could, I'm saying you could, you're not going to do this, but you could just copy this and paste it directly into your Word document. But the problem with that practice is if you get in the habit of that and then you decide, oh, I'm going to try to publish this in some journal, the journal's going to come and say, well, this is great, but we're going to charge you $900 to publish this graph in color. Do you really want it that way? And of course, the answer is probably going to be no. So what you need to do now is to edit this chart to make it black and white, which it kind of seems like it's going to be less vivid, but I'm going to show you a way that we can make it just as vivid and just as informational as this color picture, and of course use less ink. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to, you got to play with this, but we're going to double click on the chart area itself. And that's going to bring up the chart editor. And this is the place where we can then go in and play with the colors. Now, first thing I want to do is I want to change this background from this kind of off-white color that it is to just pure white. So I'm going to double click on it. And you'll notice here that it's got a color for the fill that you can't even see, right? So if I click here on fill and say either white or even no fill where it's transparent, then I'm going to be in better shape. Let's go ahead and call it white just for good measure, and then apply and close. And you'll notice this is now turned into a pure white background as opposed to that off-white background. Now what we're going to do is we're going to change the blue bars to one color or to like white, and the green bars to a gray, a shade of gray. And that's going to be a nice, there'll be enough of a contrast that you can see the bars, but it won't use a lot of ink. So the way we do this is we hover our mouse onto one of the blue bars, and if you click once, you get all of it together. That's not going to work. You want to click again on the blue bar, and you notice now the highlighting has gone to just the blue bars. So if you double click on that now, you can change that blue. Again, here's your preview. If you'll just go to a white fill and apply and close, now you've got a white bar with a black background. And we'll do the same thing for the green bar. Click on it once. That does all the data at once. You don't want that. Click on the green again. Now you'll notice just the green is highlighted. And now double click. We can now change green to a shade of gray. So I'm going to use this middle shade of gray right here. Apply, close. And that, my friends, is a much better bar chart for printing on paper. The last thing that you might want to do is get rid of this little error bar sign down here. So if I just click on that and hit delete and close, that'll get rid of that. And then I don't think the x-axis descriptor label and the y-axis label are descriptive enough. So I'm going to click on condition once and then click on it again, and that will now let me edit it. Now, so instead of condition, I'm going to call this level of processing. And I'm going to press return, and I'll do the same thing with the y-axis label. Click, and then click again. Notice I did not double click. I clicked once slowly and then clicked again. So this is now mean words recalled, something like that. Be creative, but be realistic. Okay. So once you have your chart where you like it, this is what I consider sort of the standard. So this is what you should shoot for. We just exit out of this. And notice now in our output window, it has completely changed to the graph that we edited. And so I'll show you now, this is really easy. If you just click on the chart and you go to Edit and Copy, then you can open up your Microsoft Word document like this. And on your figures page, just paste it in, just like that. And notice that is a nice looking graph that will be very well received. Okay. So I'm going to get rid of that. I don't need that right now, but that's how you do it. So that's the steps that one would do in order to make a bar graph. Now the last thing for our tutorial is I want to show you how to do your statistics. So this is the stuff that you will report in the results section. So again, I said we're going to do a mixed ANOVA. So the way you'll want to do this is not with the sort of standard ANOVA. You're going to want to go to what's called the general linear model. So let me show you how to do that. We're going to go up to Analyze, click Analyze, and go down here to General Linear Model, and you'll have some options. The option that you want is repeated measures. Repeated measures because we have a within subjects variable. That's the only reason you're doing this. So we click on that, and now we got to define some stuff. Okay. Particularly what we're going to define is we are going to define the within subjects factor name. In other words, which variable are we doing that is within subjects? And the one we're doing, of course, is word type, right? Concrete versus abstract. So I would type it in this way, word type. Then we need to tell how many levels that variable has. Now, if you remember, word type is either abstract or concrete. So it has 2 levels. So once we tell it that, notice the add button appears. We add that within subjects variable. And of course, for this experiment, that's all we have are those two, is that, that one within subjects variable. So that's all we'll put in. Down here, we need the measures, okay? Now, we only have one measure in this experiment, one dependent measure, and that measure is recall. That is the number of words recalled. So you can call it whatever you want. I like to call it recall. And then I click Add. Now we're ready to define our variables for this analysis. So we'll click Define. Okay? So you'll notice there's 3 boxes here. One box for within subjects variables, one box for between subjects factors, and then one for covariates. We don't have any covariates, so don't worry about that. Now, up here, what we're going to do is we're going to put those columns into the appropriate place. What this is telling you is that recall is measured as a function of one level of the within subjects variable word type versus another level. And those 2 levels are concrete. So we click on concrete and move it over. Versus abstract. So click on abstract, move it over. Now this sets it up 2 levels of word type. Okay. Now we need to put in our between subjects factor. Our between subjects factor was condition. Remember, that was the level of processing. And we're almost ready to hit OK, except there's a couple of things I want you to do. Don't worry about any of this other stuff right now, but do go to Options. I want you to make sure that you display descriptive statistics. Now, later on, you do some more stuff in here. You'll want to do effect size and power. Not a big deal for this experiment right now. So we're just going to do descriptive statistics and hit continue. And now we're ready to hit OK. Okay, so in your output window, remember you had your graph before. Now we have all the stuff that SPSS gives us for this ANOVA. I want to real quickly talk about what's important and what's not. Okay, I mean, it's all important, but I want to help you identify what's most important to you in your assignment. First of all, this descriptive statistics window is very important, right? This is going to tell you the actual mean numbers that were used for that graph up above, particularly in terms of concrete shallow processing, concrete deep processing, abstract shallow, abstract deep. Okay. So that's going to be important just for descriptive purposes. Multivariate tests, don't worry about that. Don't worry about our test of sphericity right now. You do want to worry about within subjects effects. Okay, remember, this is a mixed ANOVA. So you have a within subjects variable and a between subjects variable. So the within subjects variable was word type, right? Concrete versus abstract. So here's your word type variable. Now, for reasons beyond our course, there's a lot of different corrections to this thing, but for right now, just go by the top row, okay? Now remember, what you're looking for is this F score and the significance value associated with that. Remember, in null hypothesis testing, p less than 0.05, p less than 5% is a significant difference. So if we look at word type, notice we get a p-value of 0.003, which is a highly significant main effect of word type. That is, concrete words were recalled differently than abstract words, okay? Significantly differently. Now let's go to this. This is our interaction effect when you see a little asterisk there. So this is word type by condition, and you'll notice the p-value here is 0.09, which is bigger than 0.05. So this is not a significant effect, okay? So we only have the significant main effect of word type here, not the interaction. And you can kind of see that. I apologize, but I'm going to go up to the graph. You'll notice in the graph that there is, some separation between these two these two grouped bars versus this, but it's not a lot, right? If you were to make lines here from the top of the white to the top of the white and the top of the gray to the top of the gray, they would not be parallel, but they wouldn't be like crossing over, right? So this is not a significant interaction. And the hypothesis test bears that out as well. So these are some of the statistics that you will be reporting in your results section. And the lecture on inferential statistics will teach you how to do that. Okay, so you need that one, and you're also going to need your test of between subjects effects. So this is where it tests the between subjects variable of level of processing. So down here you want to find where it says condition. Again, that's the name of your variable. This is shallow versus deep. And go over here to the F score, which is huge, 35.6, and look at the significance. The significance is 0.000, which means, let me be very clear, this means very, very small. It is not equal to 0. So the way this is typically reported is P is less than 0.001. But either way, it's less than 0.05, right? So this is a highly significant main effect of condition. And you'll see that, again, going up to the graph. Deep processing resulted in much more recall than shallow processing. So remember, in a 2x2 design, which is what we have, you have two possible main effects. So here it was level of processing and word type. Both of those were significant. And there was also one interaction that was possible. It was not significant. So you get that from your output. So what I would do if I were you is save this. So just go up here, go File, and save it somewhere. That way you can go back and look at these things when you are writing up your results section. So hopefully that demystifies a little bit of the process. This is essentially a step-by-step thing of what you would do for your data. So just watch this a couple of times and then try it on your own. And if it doesn't work, let me know. Remember, you're always welcome to come by my office and work this with me. So with that, I will go for now, and let me know if you have any questions. Hope this helps.